Everyone, welcome to another lab together. Thanks so much for being my partner. Today we get to chew some gum. How exciting. So the focus of today is how much sucrose, which is the specific kind of sugar, is in a piece of gum like this one. If you haven't done so already, you will need this lab handout, whether you've printed it or put it in Notability. You need this lab to do the lab data with me, but then just as it says at the very top, this is not your lab report. You will use the information and the parts from this and refer to your lab report guide to write a full lab report, like start from scratch on Notability or a Google Doc, and that is what you turn into the assignment. So just practicing again, writing a full formal lab report with all of the pieces, just that's a good skill in terms of following directions and putting all your things, all of your ideas in a logical order is a useful skill. All right, so this is our lab. It is the moles of sucrose in bubble gum. You will come up with a title that's descriptive and kind of represents the purpose and what we used in the lab. And then there is a pre-lab question. I'm going to give you a couple hints, but I do want you to do the pre-lab on your own. So if you're stuck, just make sure that you ask for help on it. So the pre-lab says that the sugar in bubble gum is sucrose, and the chemical formula is C12H22O11. Determine the molar mass of sucrose by filling in the chart below. So it wants you to look up the molar mass for carbon. So you would find on your periodic table molar mass of carbon. Remember, it's the decimal number, but only go to 2 decimal places. So carbon, you would fill that in times how many carbons are in the formula. And then you'll get an answer for that. Hydrogen, write down the molar mass of hydrogen times how many hydrogens are in the formula. Get an answer for that. Oxygen, what is the molar mass of oxygen times how many are in the formula. Put there, get an answer for that. Add up all of that. That will be your answer for the molar mass of sucrose, which you're going to need to finish in the lab and make your claim of how many moles of sucrose are in a piece of bubble gum. All right, so that brings us to being ready to do our procedure. The procedure, there's no hypothesis for this lab because think about it. It would just be a random guess in terms of how many moles of sucrose are there, so no reason to do a hypothesis. And then you do not need to write out the procedure in your lab report. Those are things that are not necessary for this lab. All right, so that brings us to our data. You can follow along on the procedure if you want to, or you can just be kind of watching and I'll show you what I'm doing. All right, I'm gonna flip my computer down a little bit more so that you can see my actual materials instead of just seeing me. All right, so I've got my clean weigh boat. That's gonna be safe to put the gum in. I make sure that my balance is at 0, 0, which it is. Let me show you that quick. So my balance is at 0, 0, which means it's ready to be used. And then I'm gonna put the weigh boat on there. It's called a weigh boat, which is confusing because we're really measuring the mass, but that's what it's referred to as, a weigh boat. And the mass is 2.48. So 2.48 is our mass, and it kind of is slipping between 2.48 and 2.47. So I'm going to leave it as 2.48 because it was going back and forth to that. Okay, then I'm going to take my piece of bubble gum. All right, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've had a piece of bubble gum. This is going to be so much fun. All right, so I unwrap it, and then I'm going to put the bubble gum in the weigh boat. All right, and then let's check out what the mass is now. Looks like it's holding steady at 10.71. So 10.71 is our mass of weigh boat, 10.71. Mass of weigh boat plus gum. Guess what it's time to do now? Yummy! It's time to chew bubble gum. All right. So I'm going to chew the bubble gum. I'm going to blow some bubbles because it's going to be awesome. And what's happening is, as I chew and chew and chew, the sucrose is dissolving in my saliva, and then I'll eventually swallow that. So that means that when I put the gum back in the weigh boat on the balance, the mass should have gone down. I'm going to try to suck out as much spit as I can and just have just the gum in there, but now the sugar should be gone. So what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to figure out the difference between the chewed gum and the starting gum. The difference between them should be my grams of sucrose. All right. This is now where we have the advantage of a video. I am going to chew for a while, about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to come back to you. All right, so I'm gonna go chew. All right. I think that is all of the sugar is dissolved in my mouth. It is amazing how fast the flavor goes away from gum like this. So I think that all the sucrose has dissolved in my saliva. I've swallowed all of that, so there should be no more sucrose in the gum that I chew. So let me get rid of all the saliva. Okay, so this should be a pretty dry, sugarless piece of chewed gum. And then I'm going to put this back in case it bothered you to before that mass was changing. So I'm showing you, there we go. So it is 2.48. That's the mass of the Weibo. And then let me put our gum in there. All right. And then now let's figure out what the mass of that is. Remember, we're expecting it to go down from our previous one, which it totally did. So 5.25 looks like it's holding steady. So then we record that. So 5.25 grams is the after chewed gum. So this is the data that you should have. And then remember, all of the gum got dissolved in my saliva. So it should be that the difference between the gum and the chewed gum is your mass of your sucrose. And then you can use the molar mass that you figured out in the pre-lab to determine the moles of sucrose, which is the essential lab question. So then you will be prepared to write your CER conclusion. Now, there is spaces to do all of this on this lab handout. In the CER conclusion, it talks about the claim should answer the EQ, the evidence, talk about the data that you used and the math that you did that helped you get that answer from the claim. And then the reasoning should be some of the stuff that's going on. What happened with the gum and chewing the gum? And then how did our data lead to figure out the moles? What are moles? What is molar mass? Those are the kinds of things to explain your results, which is what the reasoning should do. And then notice that there is an additional conclusion question that should go at the end of your lab. It's a relating this to life in some way, all right? So that's kind of the idea for the lab. Now remember, this is not your lab report, but all of the pieces on here will help you write your lab report. All right. This is now considered a lab contaminated sample, so I'm going to throw this away. That'll be for cleanup. I'll take care of that while you go write your lab report. Thanks for being my partner today. Bye.